Welcome back to The Hub Hero, the podcast dedicated to exploring the 7 dimensions of wellness and how they impact your life here at Stephen F. Austin State University. I'm your host, King Musa, and today we'll be diving into the crucial dimension of emotional wellness. In this episode, we'll be discussing strategies for managing stress, enhancing resilience, and maintaining emotional balance. I'll be sitting down with your Dean of Students, Dr. Andrew Dees, to uncover the resources and support available at SFA to help students prioritize their emotional well-being. Let's get started. Joining me now is Dr. Dees, the Dean of Students at SFA. Welcome, Dr. Dees.
You almost forget my name now?
No,
Rude.
when I see it, I want to.
You all hear that? Good afternoon, King Musa. I hope you're having a great day.
Man, I'm having a great day. Quick question before we get started. 4th of July, what we doing?
In my friend's pool, playing with her dogs, not working.
Okay. You popping in fireworks?
No.
Okay.
Her dogs are scared of fireworks, so.
Y'all ain't got no kids that's going to be there, do y'all?
No, I don't hang out with kids. Kids are meant to be seen and not heard. So, no. If there are children there, I will be evacuating.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and dive on.
We like to keep it real here on the podcast.
We do. I don't know. But to keep it real, what defines the emotional wellness, and especially in the context of student life?
So emotional wellness is one of the 7 dimensions of wellness, and I think that probably the most important one. It is your emotional well-being. So your thoughts, your feelings, and how you manage those. From when you are upset, how do you de-escalate yourself? So if you're feeling sad, how do you bring yourself back to being happy and joyful? And then how do you regulate those emotions?
Got you. So, I mean, as a guy, I'm kind of like, I ain't got no emotions, you know what I'm saying? But how do you kind of start to understand, like, is it just when I'm not happy or?
I mean, emotions range. Like you're happy, you're sad, you're angry, you're mad, you have the butterflies in your stomach, or because you're about to go on a first date, or you have butterflies because you're about to fail that chemistry test you didn't study for. All of those are emotions, and they're all healthy. What is not healthy is when you're mad and you punch a hole in the wall. Okay. That's not a healthy expression. But like tears are one of the healthiest expressions of emotions that I think a human being can do.
You know, that's actually true. Because I see tears like throwing up. You know, once you let it out, you feel good to get right back into it.
They are cousins. I've never thought about that.
Right.
But yes, tears cleanse the soul.
Okay. Why should emotional wellness be a priority for students?
Because it is going to impact everything else. We know the 7 dimensions of wellness are all interconnected. I think, personally, emotional wellness is the most important one because it has the greatest impact on everything else. So, you know, if you fail a test and that's your intellectual wellness, it may not necessarily have those lifelong consequences versus if you're managing or mismanaging depression, anxiety, thoughts of suicide, that is going to have an impact on everything else and will certainly have an impact on the other dimensions.
So would you say, like, when it comes to emotional wellness, is it more short term, like the day to day, and then like changes, or is it more long term? Like if I'm in the slumps for like 2-3 days and stuff like that, that's when I should start prioritizing it.
Well, you should always prioritize it to prevent that from happening.
Okay.
That's a part of emotional intelligence, is recognizing your own feelings and the impact that they have on you and the people around you, because we don't live in a vacuum. And so when I'm in a bad mood, for those that work around me or those that know me, they're going to know that I'm in a bad mood. So then they start to walk on eggshells, or then they'll come and be like, oh, what's wrong? Or they'll feel nervous to come and talk to me. So it should always be a priority, but like I say, that's why that emotional intelligence is so important.
Got you. Okay, so who might be particularly vulnerable to emotional changes and why?
18 to 24-year-olds, which happen to be college students. Your brain doesn't fully form until you're 25. You still got all of those hormones racing around in your body.
Right.
And you're coming to college, a brand new experience. Even for our transfer students, it's still a brand new experience. And that can cause anxiety, that can cause stress, it can cause excitement. You know, in the first 6 weeks of a first-year student's year at a college are the most important because it will dictate how successful they are the rest of their time. And that's why we inundate with programs and inundate with resources to ensure that success.
Right. So, okay, help me understand this a little bit more. So you telling me if I get to school, and people first get to school, you meet a friend, y'all go out to lunch and everything else like that. And then you might find out your friend went to lunch with another friend and you may not like that, right? And then next thing you know, she's in the dorm hall right next to you and everything, being a gardening tool, right? That's all I can say on camera. Is that really when I need emotional wellness, like, through relationships and stuff?
Maybe, depending on the impact that it has. Everybody manages those things differently, manages relationships, manages breakups. Everybody does those differently. So you have to get to know yourself, get to know what your triggers are, get to know what your and this is in life in general,
Right.
Get to know what your non-negotiables are, what you will and will not tolerate from another human being, because we're all in relationships.
Okay.
You and I are in a relationship.
Right.
We have a friendship. We have that connection. So there's different types of relationships, but we set the standards for what we're going to allow and not allow. Again, that goes back to emotional intelligence.
So what about my roommate? Let's say I don't like my roommate, or they just nasty. You know what I'm saying? And would that affect my emotional awareness too?
Having experienced that my freshman year 100 years ago, yes.
Okay.
But that's also a part of how do you advocate for yourself? That's that emotional intelligence as well, as like, hey, you haven't showered in the recent past, and that is impacting me. Or you're leaving your dirty socks everywhere.
Right.
But that's why communication is so important. A lot of the issues, certainly in the residence halls, that are at the basis of roommate conflicts are just a lack of communication.
What about, for maybe a last check, professors? You know what I'm saying? Like, this one kind of seemed a little too tough, you know what I'm saying? Or a little too tight. If I can say the other stuff, I'll say the other stuff.
Well, you've heard me say 1,000 times, life is all about choices.
Right.
Certainly earlier on in your academic career, there's however many English 1301 classes. If you don't like that professor, change times, change sections, whatever. The further on you get in your career or in your academic career, there may be one professor that teaches that class. So you got to suck it up and deal with it.
So, but as far as the emotional side, is there prioritizing that still when it comes to?
Well, I think you need to unpack why maybe you don't like a faculty member. Why?
Okay.
Let's unpack that a little bit more and figure out, is it you? Is it them?
Right.
If it's you, you can fix that. If it's them, you can't fix it. So why worry about it?
Okay. I like that. So when should a student recognize they need to seek help for emotional issues?
Again, that goes back to that emotional intelligence. This isn't one of those things where it's better to ask forgiveness and permission. So if you recognize, hey, something's going on, maybe you don't know what it is,
right?
But something is off. That's when you go and access those resources. That's where you go and talk to your RA if you live on campus,
right?
Which all of our first-year students do, and the vast majority of our second-year students. There are so many resources on campus that are available and underutilized by students. So recognizing that and be like, okay, I don't know where to go, I don't know what to do, but I know there's something there.
Okay. So to kind of put that in comparison, I was at church the other day and the pastor was explaining that, he was at the gym, his knee was hurting, right? But then he said a lot of the pain wasn't coming from the knee issue, it was coming from his back issue. Because of his back hurting, he has to adjust a certain way, and now it's causing his knee to hurt. And so he struggled to move forward, right? So let's talk about that back pain, like the previous high school pain, parents' pain, old friends and old social group pain and stuff like that. Is that something that might translate into the emotional unawareness that's happening?
1,000,000%. When we're talking youth, that's called an adverse childhood experience. Part of what I did my dissertation on is how many of our students are coming in, they're ACEs for short, how many students are coming in with these ACEs, and the research shows the more ACEs, it's a cumulative effect. So you're going to have more stress. You're going to have more anxiety. You could have heart conditions. You could be experiencing obesity. Substance use increases with the number of ACEs. So we can't necessarily control our childhood and what the experiences we have. But we can control how we deal with that, and that's not something that you can avoid.
Right.
I mean, there's a difference between an ACE and just having a hard childhood.
Right.
Two very different things. But when we're talking abuse, poverty, any kind of substance use or abuse in the household growing up, there is so much research that shows the impact that has on a student once they leave that environment.
Okay. Now, something else that I experienced kind of during the summertime, right? One of my friends, she doesn't like being yelled at, and I'm a very vocal, expressive person and everything, right? So we're playing spades, right? We're playing spades, and I'm slamming it on the table, everything else like that. But there came to this point where we had to kind of have a conversation, a couple of days after finding out that it did affect her, and it was something that brought back, those traumas and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Is voicing or communicating those things that is like, hey, I kind of grew up this way, or these things kind of like for me now, I don't like knocking doors. Do not come to my door and knock, because just the experience of what it was like having too many people knock on my door, So would you say students need to have that awareness?
Well, I think it just respecting people around you. So certainly if somebody comes and says, hey, for whatever reason, that's not my jam, then the response should be, okay. Like if it's something like, oh, you can't come in the room past 10 o'clock and you're my roommate, that's entirely different. But when we're having those social interactions, we all have to learn how to navigate each other.
Right.
And we all live in our own reality, and we all see things through our own perspectives. And those perspectives comes from our childhood, from our life experiences. And so you just have to respect that.
Okay.
And I think that gets lost a lot. And we can disagree. We're polarized as a society.
Right.
We can disagree and not hate each other.
Yes.
Like you could like pumpkins and I could like squash, and that doesn't mean we have to hate each
disgusting.
other. It is. I hate squash. I actually don't mind squash. But it's like, okay, cool. You like pumpkins. I don't. I like squash.
Right. Okay.
The world can continue to turn, and we not all have to agree.
Right. So is it, last one on this topic, is it my job to voice the things that bother me because you can't read my mind?
Yes, I can't fix something that I don't know exists.
Right.
So if my communication style is very direct, that's what I want back. Some people don't know how to handle that. So that it's, in being in a leadership position, it's on me to ask those that are around me and that I work with, what kind of communication style do you want? Some people can't handle it, which is fine.
Right.
Just because it's my way doesn't make it the right way.
The highway.
Right. That's not the kind of leader, and there are plenty of leaders that are like that, but that's not me. And so it is on me to be like, okay, I know like some folks need a couple of days to process stuff. So I know if there's a big discussion coming, I send it out. I call them the percolators.
Right.
So those that need to percolate can do that. I'm not that person. I can make decisions instantly, and I move very fast. Again, that's my style. It works for me. Some people don't operate like that. They need more time and move a lot slower. And the static comes in is when those paths don't ever cross, or they don't ever align with each other.
Got you. Where can students access emotional wellness resources on campus?
Our website, or the Health and Wellness Hub, or the Dean of Students Office, Campus Rec. There's tons of places.
Right. Okay. And how can students proactively enhance their emotional wellness?
So it's a matter of, maintenance is a good thing. We get our tires changed. We get our oil checked on our cars. That's preventative maintenance, so something bad doesn't happen.
Right.
It's no different with our mental health, is going and talking to somebody, checking, like, I've been sad the last couple of days. I don't know why. Maybe it's because it's been cloudy.
Right.
I've been angry because it's hot, and I don't like being hot, and I'm not really angry, but I'm like, environmental wellness, the impact that has can't be overstated. It's like if it's 75 degrees outside, you will see me skipping around because that is the most beautiful weather on the planet. When it's 8 million degrees outside, I'm like, no, I'm not leaving the house. I'm not leaving my office. No. And so just being able to recognize that, but then not being scared to access those resources. Asking for help isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign of courage.
Okay. I like that. So talking about on-campus resources, who, where, how do I start to even get help? Like, what's the idea here?
I'm going to encourage you to go to the Health and Wellness Hub located at East College and Brigade Streets. Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, they are open. Within the Health and Wellness Hub are counseling services, health services, student outreach and support, student wellness, and our pantry, which is our food pantry and our parent pantry together. That is, and why we created the hub is that's your one-stop place to go get your mental health and your emotional health needs taken care of. They have an internal referral system. So if you're seeing the physician's assistant for maybe you've been cutting yourself and so you need to go get some bandages. She can then walk you down the hall to one of our counselors or to somebody in our student outreach and support office to make that incredibly warm handoff.
Right.
Before the hub existed, these resources were spread all over campus. And so by consolidating them all together and taking the community health approach, students can get everything taken care of at one spot. If coming in person isn't your jam, we've got at least 4 counseling services. We have our Timely Care platform, which is virtual health. You can get up to 9 appointments in an academic year, which is usually what students need. Like the notion of therapy every week isn't something that happens. And if that's something you need, we would refer you to off campus because we can't sustain that, and no college counseling center can. But Timely Care has chat rooms. There's different little stress relief techniques in there. And then we've also got our crisis line that at 24/7, 365, you call the hub, you press 1, that'll get you connected with a crisis counselor.
So there's 3 different ways, whether it's virtual, on the phone, or in person. I like that. So now there's multiple different options where, like, when you're listing off counselors, therapists, wellness coaches, directors, where do I start? Like, do I go to a therapist? How do I know if I need a therapist versus a counselor or even just a wellness coach?
That's a good question. I think it depends on what we're talking about. Any level of suicidality, threat to self or others, we're going to get you connected with that crisis counselor and see one of our full-time therapists.
Right.
If you're just kind of wanting to explore your options, I would encourage a wellness coach.
Okay.
There are generalist positions. There also are student positions. So you're talking with a peer, which some people love, some people hate.
Right.
But then you're having that engagement with a peer. They have that referral system. They can get you connected with different resources in the hub and outside of the hub. So that's where I would start.
Got you. Okay. I really enjoyed having a wellness coach. I mean, it was not just emotional stuff. Was able to go over class stuff and just keeping a schedule. And that was something to be able to book and manage with all the time.
And they're trained on the 7 dimensions of wellness, and they know the impact that it has when one of those dimensions is off. So they're an incredible resource on campus. They're up here.
I like it. So that kind of completes today's episode of The Hub Hero. Thank you, Dr. Dees, for sharing your valuable insight on emotional wellness. That wraps up this episode of The Hub Hero. Remember, emotional wellness is a vital part of your overall well-being. Don't hesitate to reach out and utilize resources available here at SFA. Subscribe to our podcast and for more insight into other dimensions of wellness. Until next time, take care of yourself and each other. Before we go, quick question. What's our next topic?
Let's do intellectual.
Intellectual. Okay. Give us a little brief overview what that is.
That's your mind. That's your learning inside and outside the classroom.
Okay. From the heart to the mind, let's go ahead and get it started. Thank you all for tuning in today. Subscribe to The Hub Hero for your weekly insight into wellness. Connect with us on social media and share your thoughts and stay engaged with the SFA community. See you next time.